Spice and Wolf is a series that is very dear to my heart. I didn't just like it, I genuinely fell in love with it. It's already a well-regarded series, but even so I often find myself thinking that it's still underrated. More people should not just watch it, but read the light novels, because that's where the real magic happens. What follows is my attempt to explain why I love it so much. I'll try to be analytical, but it's going to be a very gushy kind of analytical. At its core, Spice and Wolf begins with a simple premise. Lawrence is a traveling merchant who dreams of saving enough money to one day open his own shop and live the life of an established town merchant. Hollow is an immortal wolf deity who wants to return to her homeland, Yoitsu. One day Hollow shows up in his carriage, sleeping in a bundle of furs. And that's where the trouble begins. Lawrence realizes he doesn't want to go back to his lonely days of sitting alone in a carriage. And Hollow, despite her faint disinterest, wants to stay with him as well. And so they travel together, trading their way to Yoitsu. This setup does a lot of heavy lifting. For Lawrence, it creates a constant tension between profit and companionship. He has to balance his ambitions as a merchant with his desire to remain by Hollow's side. That tension pushes him into uncomfortable choices, risky deals and moral compromises, all things he likely wouldn't do on his own. Hollow, on the other hand, might seem like she's just along for the ride, but she's far from passive. She helps Lawrence in all sorts of clever ways. She assists in negotiations, gathers vital information, becomes his trusted advisor, and when things get dire, she can always fall back on her trump card, becoming a massive wolf. But beneath her cunning and confidence, Hollow carries a unique kind of loneliness. Her village abandoned her as a goddess. She hasn't seen her fellow immortals in the north for so long she isn't even sure they are still alive. To most people, she's either feared as a demon or dismissed as a myth. And even if she were to form bonds with them, she knows, sooner or later, she'd outlive them all. That's the emotional core of the show. Two lonely souls, both convinced they were destined to walk alone, find in each other the companionship they thought they'd never have. But hanging over their journey is a quiet, persistent dread. They both know that once Hollow reaches Yoitsu, their contract is fulfilled and that time together will likely end. They're building something beautiful, but with an expiration date they can't ignore. Let's talk about the characters of Spice and Wolf. There's not many, the series has a very focused cast, which makes perfect sense because the main focus is always on the relationship between the two main characters, and everyone else just comes and goes with the cities they travel through. The character of Hollow walks a fascinating line between contradictions. She's both youthful and wise, playful yet deeply self-aware. Her ability to shift from light-hearted banter to profound introspection is part of what makes her so compelling. As a centuries-old wolf deity in a girl's body, she blends the charm of youthful innocence with the world-weariness of someone who's seen everything. She's not just powerful, but also fiercely independent, with a sharp wit and a sense of self that few characters can match. Her design is as simple as it is effective. She wears one of Lawrence's coats, which somehow fits her perfectly. She carries a small pouch filled with milled grain, something she needs to survive, as lore-wise she is quite literally the wolf who resides in the wheat. Her ears and tail have soft white tufts, adding texture and a slightly mystical quality to her look. Her red eyes contrast beautifully with her brown hair, reinforcing her supernatural nature. Some might say she looks more fox-like than wolf-like, but honestly, it works. She's charming, clever, and just a little mischievous, so the aesthetic fits her perfectly. Her backstory elevates her even further. It lends credibility to her personality and her actions, and together with her design, it creates a cohesive picture. In the world of Spice and Wolf, Hollow is more than just a character. She served as the harvest goddess of a small village, ensuring bountiful crops for generations, and it was said that she resided in the final sheaf of wheat during the harvest. But as farming techniques improved, the people no longer wanted to rely on the whims of a god. They abandoned their old beliefs, and with them, Hollow. So she left. Her true home lies far to the north, in a city where she once lived among immortal beings like herself. But it's been centuries since she last saw them, and she doesn't even know if they're still alive. That's the weight she carries with her. Immortality, loneliness, abandonment, and a hope, however faint, that she might not be alone forever. Lawrence is in his mid-20s, but you wouldn't necessarily guess that at a first glance. With his grey hair and composed demeanor, he gives off the impression of someone older and more experienced. In a way, he's kind of the reverse Hollow. Hollow looks youthful but is ancient. Lawrence looks older but is actually still quite young. He's deeply lonely, like fantasizing that his horse turns into a woman lonely. But he's also resigned to that loneliness. His lifestyle as a traveling merchant just doesn't allow for a stable home life, let alone romance. Not yet, anyway. Still, he's ambitious. He dreams of settling down, opening his own shop, and eventually marrying. He's competent and smart when it comes to trade, negotiation, and navigating tricky political situations. But underneath all that, he's soft, empathetic, and kind. On top of all that, he has enough personality to feel like a real person, but he's unassuming enough that viewers, especially men, can easily project themselves onto him. He's not some overpowered fantasy self-insert, nor is he a blank slate. He's a grounded, relatable character, smart, vulnerable, and very human. Apart from the two main characters, there's also a few supporting characters. These characters range from completely unimportant and forgettable to actually being quite memorable and interesting, largely depending on how crucial they are to the story at that moment. We have characters like Nora the Shepherdess, who helps them overcome one of their biggest crises, Amati, who tries to win over Hollow in a battle between merchants, Diana the Alchemist, who helps them uncover parts of Hollow's forgotten past, and of course Elsa the Priest and Evan the Miller, whose relationship gives Lawrence and Hollow a glimpse of what they could be. They're all well written, none of them feel out of place, and while it's clear that each one serves a narrative purpose, they still feel like real people. People who just happen to live in the towns Lawrence and Hollow pass through. But what they all have in common is that they're transient, singular encounters, and when their arc concludes, we return to just Lawrence and Hollow, sitting in a wagon, traveling to the next city. While the plot of Spice and Wolf is largely a stage for the romance to unfold, it's far from shallow. The story puts Hollow and Lawrence through a series of trials and tribulations. Each arc challenges them in new ways, both practically and emotionally, strengthening their relationship while also telling compelling stories in their own right. On the surface, the story is about trade deals, conspiracies, betrayal, competitions between merchants, political intrigues, and much more. It asks Lawrence the question, what is more important to me, making money or Hollow? What is more important to me, my dream of opening up a shop or Hollow? What is more important to me, my soul as a merchant or Hollow? It asks Hollow the question, do I resign myself to the comfort of my loneliness, or do I dare to love someone, knowing that I will watch them die and be alone again? And it keeps asking these questions over and over, and with each arc the answer evolves and the priorities shift as their relationship grows stronger. Lawrence grows as a person, and even Hollow finds herself having to admit that even the ancient wise wolf of Yoritsu does not always have all the answers. This creates the breathing room needed for a believable, organic development of their relationship. Just two people gradually growing closer, shaped by the situations they face together. The world building is equally restrained and effective. There's just enough detail to make the setting feel real, full of trade routes, political tensions, and cultural texture, without overwhelming the viewer with lore dumps or needless exposition. Everything feels intentional. The series is a masterclass in how to balance a compelling narrative with a deeply satisfying slow burn romance, all while using the least number of moving parts possible. There are no wars, no world-ending stakes, just clever writing, emotional nuance, and the very few characters that the series has feel genuinely alive. As a result, Spice and Wolf might be one of the least anime out there. No battles between overpowered characters, no magic systems or secret bloodlines. Hollow being able to turn into a giant wolf is truly the pinnacle of the story's fantastical elements, And even that is used so sparingly that you find yourself quickly forgetting about it. And so what you get in the end is really just a slowly developing story about economics and love set in a vaguely medieval world where merchants worry about trade routes, tariffs, and silver purity. It's quiet, grounded, and sincere in a way that feels surprisingly rare for the medium. I mean, sure, it borrows from a few recognizable tropes, like Hollow's animal features, her tendency to get naked for no reason at all, the fact that she essentially just fell into Lawrence's life at his loneliest moment. But those moments never define the narrative. They're essentially just a bit of anime flavor in an otherwise grounded and believable story. Strip that away, and what's left could easily be a Western fantasy novel. And in a world where light novel titles are often longer than their summaries, Spice and Wolf is something rare. A story with actual literary merit. The writing is strong, not just structurally, but sentence by sentence. If you really pay attention, you'll notice just how vividly and carefully crafted it is. When Hollow walks, she doesn't just walk, she walks as if she was trying to punch holes into the cobblestones. Hollow's tail doesn't just fluff up a bit, her tail puffs up like a bottle brush, which has to be my favorite expression in the whole series. And perhaps horses really could understand humans and simply preferred not to speak. What I'm trying to say is it isn't just a novel that caters to anime fans, it's genuinely a good read. It would be a grave sin to talk about Spice and Wolf and not talk about the banter between Lawrence and Hollow. In fact, it's not an exaggeration to say it's the main draw of the show. At first, it's a simple game for Hollow. She can't help but amuse herself by teasing Lawrence, who is easily flustered by her antics. Over time though, Lawrence learns how to tease her back. He gradually wins more often, though she still holds the upper hand most of the time. Their back and forth is clever, sharp, and consistently entertaining. But more than that, through this battle of wits, they come to know each other on a deep level, building mutual trust and respect with every interaction. But it's even more than that. Hollow is a lonely goddess who fears getting too close to anyone, because mortals live such short lives and every bond is destined to end in heartbreak. Lawrence, meanwhile, is a solitary traveling merchant who's always focused on making money. He has little experience in matters of the heart, as he would put it, and few lasting connections, because his lifestyle never allowed him to stay in one place for long. So they're both incredibly lonely, yet also hesitant to form a connection, because they fear it may not last. Their banter becomes a kind of emotional negotiation. Much like a business deal, each of them tries to gain insight into the other, while giving up as little of themselves as possible. In effect, they slowly break down each other's defenses, not through grand declarations, but through skillful teasing, subtle jabs, and tender moments of vulnerability. And sometimes they go a little too far. They let their guard down. They find themselves doing things they never expected. Actions that almost always end with them in each other's arms. These moments are so tender and emotionally satisfying. They feel like the romance equivalent of Sakuga. And in those moments they realize they're not just playing a game anymore. They mean something real to each other. And what's beautiful about their relationship is that it doesn't need to build towards one big love confession. Instead, every exchange is its own quiet declaration of affection, of respect, and yes, eventually, of love. And as those moments slowly build, their feelings become undeniable, spoken not in words, but in the space between them. Spice and Wolf is a rare kind of slow burn romance. It brings together two lonely souls, both yearning for connection, yet both too guarded, too scared to fully commit. Every story arc, every playful exchange, every fleeting gesture of affection gradually melts those walls. And it all unfolds so slowly, so naturally, that each step forward feels earned and deeply satisfying. And in the end, Isuna Hasekura doesn't just make Lawrence and Hollow fall in love with each other, he makes us fall in love with them too. It's not just about their chemistry, it's about how their personalities open up to us, little by little, in ways that feel real and honest. We fall for Hollow's love of apples, her sweet tooth, her mischievous teasing, her fierce pride, and the raw loneliness she tries so hard to hide. We fall for Lawrence's awkward charm, the way he gets flustered by her moods, his tireless attempts to prove himself worthy of her respect, his quiet sacrifices, and the internal struggle he faces as he tries to reconcile his dreams with her happiness. Through their journey, we don't just root for them, we worry for them, smile with them, and ache with them. And when a story can do that, when it invites you to feel not just the love between the characters, but your own love for them, that's when it becomes something truly unforgettable.